Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Valeria and this is the Off-Road Range. Today I want to talk about the fact that the Blue Zone theory is complete bullshit. And I will tell you why. The Blue Zone theory is an excellent business strategy that both the authors and owners of Blue Zones have made hundreds of millions of dollars from ordinary people on. From people who believe 99% illogical unproven crap that has 1% of truth. Thanks to this 1% of truth, the secrets of longevity in the Blue Zones are very difficult to challenge. So the hype around this concept in social networks and constant advertising prompted me to make this video. In short, absolutely all the rules that were stated in the theory of Blue Zones either work always and all over the world as the rules for the function of the body, or do not work at all, since we are in different geographical, climatic and financial conditions. And I want to look at this in more detail. I will give you a number of examples why the Blue Zone theory is illogical, false, has no scientific basis and statistical evidence, and why the Blue Zone theory is just a number of isolated factors and isolated cases of people who are not related to each other, taken out of the overall picture, beautifully adjusted to each other. As a result, you intuitively feel that this is complete bullshit, but you cannot find fault with anything, and in the end, you consider it true. Let's go. But for those who don't know what the Blue Zones are, I will tell you briefly. You can find out more details from numerous sources, but I think that after watching my video, you hardly need it. What are Blue Zones at all? The Blue Zone theme took off around 1999, when Dan Buettner, in collaboration with National Geographic, led a series of expeditions involving demographers, anthropologists, and other scientists from various fields of science. The purpose of these expeditions was to visit those regions of the world in which statistically there live a very large number of people who are centenarians. After studying the features of their lifestyle, how they live, what they eat, how they sleep, what they drink, in 2005, hopeless marketing and advertising of the secrets of longevity began. Advertising of articles, books, courses, training, nutrition systems, and even the creation of their own Blue Zones. After 20 years, they decided to resume this topic, because after 20 years, my generation and the generation younger than me do not know about the concept of Blue Zones. What are these Blue Zones and where are they located? The province of Nuora on the island of Sardinia in Italy was the first area to be designated a Blue Zone. At that time, it wasn't called that yet. This area was identified thanks to the demographic work of Belgian scientists Gianni Pes and Michel Poulain. They identified the region with the highest concentration of centenarians. Then they outlined the region on the map with the blue closed line and began calling the zone inside the line the Blue Zone. Soon, American researcher and author Dan Buettner expanded and popularized this term and began applying it to other regions with observed increased longevity. Such places turned out to be the island of Okinawa in Japan, the largest island of the subtropical archipelago with the largest number of long-lived women. Also, Loma Linda region in the USA near California. Residents there have an average life expectancy of 10 years more than in the United States as a whole. Subsequently, this list was further expanded to include places such as the island of Ikaria in Greece and the Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica. The Greek island of Ikaria is located in the Aegean Sea off the coast of Turkey. The Nicoya Peninsula is Central America. There are 5 Blue Zones. So, what features of their lifestyle have been identified? What do they eat? How do they sleep? What do they drink? How do they rest? What access to medical care do they have? And why do I criticize all these features and, in general, the entire theory of the blue zones and how much of this really matters. So, factors that make the blue zones special, according to the authors of the theory, are moderate regular physical activity, moderate calorie intake, plant nutrition, moderate alcohol consumption. This is nonsense regardless of any theories, since alcohol kills cells, kills the brain, destroys proteins, and so on. Purpose in life. Reduced stress in life. For me, it is unclear how reduced stress can be combined with purpose and goal achievement, but we will talk about it later. Involvement in social life. Involvement in spirituality, the presence of values, like-minded people. Involvement in family life. On their own, these points sound great, but I will criticize each of these points in the blue zones theory. The first point is everyday and moderate physical activity. The blue zone theory states that in Okinawa, an 80-90-year-old person can squat 30 times a day without any problems, while in America, one of the main causes of age-related mortality is falls. People have weak lower bodies and poor balance, since people every day for decades are sitting on chairs and are lazy for the rest of the time. However, you don't have to live in Okinawa to experience this discovery. To do this, you need to move more. The province of Nuoro in Italy is located in a mountainous area, and this is a constant load on the heart and on the blood vessels. And this is their training. However, their life in the mountains is a consequence of attempts to conquer the population, and as a result, people climbed high into the mountains to preserve their family and protect the community. Many people have a garden they walk in for several hours every day. This is also physical activity. Working with hands is very important. It preserves mental health, it develops the brain, it reduces the risk of Alzheimer's disease. But this is not an advantage. This is their job. This is necessity, food, and survival. We shouldn't present the pre-industrial way of life as a reason for longevity or an option we should strive to. If each of us has a goal in life, a task to solve, we will move much more. We will get our butts off the couch and do what we need to do. A consequence of traditional culture, historical features are perceived as something unusual and magical, although our grandparents led such a lifestyle. This means that we stopped turning to our roots, shifted our priorities from our family, our history, to money and business, turned off the analysis of what we are doing. And this is not about the blue zones. The ability to buy, order, travel by car, that is technological progress, also leads to harmful consequences. But you must change this where you live, not in blue zones. After all, people, on the contrary, often strive to cities for opportunities and income. Then what is the point in comparing two different lives? If we talk about physical activities in the blue zone of Loma Linda, then if you learn more about this place, you will understand that people there live richly and in good spirits. California is one of the richest states in America. The people living there have the opportunity not to strain themselves, but to play tennis, basketball, and swimming all day long. People spend at least 3 hours a day playing sports and communicating with each other. I think that if you have the opportunity to live like this, you will not refuse. And even if you do not prolong your life, since your body will be worn out, then at least you will live the rest of your days happily and carefree. And in general, if you initially live in a rich family and since childhood you have been in conditions with an excellent climate, sunshine, quality food and healthcare, you will live longer than people who work their butts off and make ends meet. There is no connection with the blue zones. The factor number 2 is moderate calorie intake. Throughout human history, People have been malnourished and were forced to constantly search for food, except for the last 50 years. While the USA FDA recommends 2,000 calories per person per day, in fact a person eats 4,000 calories per person per day on average. 73% of America are obese or overweight. Over the last 50 years, there has been a very large increase in agricultural production, and all this food needs to be sold. Portions have become larger. Marketing tells you to eat more. Food has become attractive, colorful, and full of additives for a pleasant taste. In addition, the speed of life has increased. A person rushes to eat in 5 minutes, and during this time, he doesn't understand taste and saturation, and doesn't understand the amount of food eaten. So maybe this is a problem, not the fact that you don't live in one of the blue zones. But why do residents of the blue zones remain slim throughout their lives? Firstly, yes, they eat healthy, filling foods with a few calories, which are eaten slowly: vegetables, grains, legumes. This is not a hamburger that you eat in a minute without noticing it and confuses the feeling of fullness with the feeling of heaviness in your stomach. Secondly, they know what they are eating, and their food is not full of preservatives, flavors, hidden sugars and fats. When your diet is low in fats and sugars, it's difficult to eat up calories. They also often eat calmly and slowly, listening to the body and knowing when they are full but not overeat it. More than one philosophy says that you should get up from the table a little hungry. And this rule has been cultivated since childhood. There is, from childhood, the way of eating that has a beneficial effect on human health is laid down. Gluttony, especially periodic and uncontrolled consumption of food, leads to diseases that top the list of the main diseases of mankind. However, it is not the name of the philosophy that is important, but the essence. And one more important point that no one thinks about. In hot countries, you don't want to eat. And if you noticed, all these blue zones are located in warm climate close to the equator. Residents of hot countries want to drink and replenish their electrolyte balance, so they drink various teas and herbal infusions. But in the heat, you want to eat much less, so a person doesn't gain weight. Therefore, in order to eat quality food, you don't need to live in the blue zones. You need to start from where you are. Try to cook yourself, minimize flavorants, dyes and preservatives. Reduce the amount of salt, sugar and fat. You also need to find at least 15 minutes to eat quietly and understand what you are eating and whether you like it. The next rule is an emphasis on plant-based nutrition. I am not including Loma Linda here because, as I said, wealthy people live there and they are given a quality diet. This diet is rich in vegetables, fruits, legumes, cereals, nuts and relatively little meat. But if you take naturally formed zones, then, for example, according to the author of the theory, 67% of the Okinawan diet is purple sweet potato, beni ima. This product is full of antioxidants. This is an excellent source of fiber and a source of quality carbohydrates. The Okinawan also consume homemade, high-quality tofu cheese, which is rich in protein, which is needed for hormones, blood production, bone and muscle formation, healthy nails and skin. In Nicoya, most of the diet consists of corn, squash and beans, which also contain a huge amount of nutrients and antioxidants. And beans are also rich in protein. This trend can be seen in all other blue zones. But such a diet was formed historically and forcibly. In one of the films about blue zones, the Okinawan woman says that Okinawa had a period of food shortage and they were saved by these potatoes. People still eat what is available on the ground. They do not spend a lot of money on the food that is imported, like we do. They eat little processed food what their land gives, and do not spend money on food that is not available in their regions. Moreover, more than one resident says that there is no one ingredient that is best for longevity. Maybe we should buy or grow food that is healthy. But we are looking for a magic pill, or some myth that will explain why they are like this and we are like this. Or we don't want to change anything at all. We give in to the temptation of food and overeat. In addition, in the theory it sounds rather strange that people in the blue zones had to find out how to survive on their own, to identify plants to use for food and spices for medicine. It's strange because there is absolutely nothing new. All over the world, all of humanity has survived only in this way. That is why we live in the territories we live and eat what we eat. But why don't we eat and drink healthy and natural food is a question for us, for the pharmaceutical industry, which is not interested in us being healthy and having effective cheap remedies, and a question for the marketing and food industry, which pushes food at us and sets huge prices for healthy products. By the way, when I have my own vegetable garden, I will definitely show you. For now it is tiny, because I don't have time to take care of it. So, it was also definitely wrong to assume or say that carbohydrates are the enemy. This is the most important source of energy. You have to consume it. The main question is quantity and processing of food. A sugar bun in fried oil is, of course, evil, but whole grain pasta is normal. Other complex carbohydrates, buckwheat, lentils, beans, as well as vegetables, beets, zucchini, eggplants, and so on, are extremely healthy and necessary. Everything is healthy in moderate amounts, and everything is eaten for a certain balance. In addition, you should understand that the microbiota of your stomach has been adapted to a certain diet with a certain lifestyle during your entire life. It is very likely that you should eat better. But if you fully apply all rules of the zones for yourself, for example, you start eating 70% of corn, beans and squash, then most likely you will have intestinal upset, problems with stool, and perhaps even a mild degree of eating disorder. Therefore, eliminate your ignorance regarding what food is healthy and what products we need for what. At a minimum, you can watch my video number 4 and reduce external influence on you without analysis and without knowing the truth. The rules of quality nutrition work everywhere and not just in the blue zones. And do not compare eggs with corn and squashes, as some illiterate experts do. This is complete lack of logic, and this lack of logic permeates the entire film. Moderate alcohol consumption, mostly wine. This point is an absolute lie and nonsense. Under no circumstances can any alcohol be beneficial. The benefits of antioxidants in wine cannot exceed its destructive effect on the body, no matter how environmentally friendly the products for its production are grown, no matter how eco-friendly and traditional the way it is made. Alcohol in any form kills the body. The difference is that the low-quality alcohol kills the body many times faster and sometimes right away. If constant, short-term fun is more important for you than your health, it's your right, but it's a problem. I will not develop this topic further, since the claim that wine prolongs life is complete bullshit. Any alcohol kills the brain, destroys internal organs, destroys proteins, kills nervous cells, and so on. The next point is about goals in life. A person must have a goal in life. I am of the opinion that having goals prolongs life. It allows to continue at any cost. It disciplines a person. It sets priorities. It gives you new skills, socialization, and self-realization. This is what you live for. However, in the theory of blue zones, there is a substitution of concepts. The meaning of life is replaced by the concept of life, by a way of life that has been formed over hundreds of years, by the need to do what needs to be done. People get up early in the morning to graze their cattle, tend their gardens, go to church. People methodically and slowly create quality things with their own hands. But this is not the meaning of life. This is a traditional way of life that has existed for hundreds of years. If you just do something leisurely for pleasure, it is a lifestyle, not a goal. The meaning of life is a goal, a difficult task that you have set for yourself in order to solve it. This is the path leading to self-realization, to the maximum disclosure of your skills, talents, and gain experience. The more difficult the goal, the more difficult the path, with stress, lack of sleep, failures, sacrifice of friends and family. The next point is a reduced level of stress in life. What is stress? Where does it come from? How does it affect the body? How to relieve it? This is a separate topic for consideration. However, in short, stress is the body's reaction to unfavorable factors and the corresponding state of the nervous system. In large quantities, stress shortens life expectancy, provokes diseases, and leads to mental disorders. Residents of the blue zones have no or very few factors leading to stressful situations. For example, in Noora, according to the author, many residents are shepherds. They follow animals a lot and everywhere in the mountains, and sleep during the day. This is constant physical activity without stress. In other blue zones, people do everything slowly, take their time and, again, sleep during the day. This is a way of life where there is no multitasking, no need to survive, no career race. This is a life that is not available for us now, and of course we need to strive to reduce stress in life. But shall we all become shepherds? We need to learn how to cope with stress. Stress is release of hormones and substances. They are processed and must be disposed of. One of the ways to relieve stress is physical activity. Another is tears. However, if you don't solve the problem, the stress returns and gets worse, despite attempts to relieve it. You get a vicious circle: hysteria, whining, complaints about life, inadequate reactions, and the likelihood of psychological problems. Therefore, problems must be solved, not postponed. Apart from this, there are many ways to reduce stress, and if you're interested, write about it in the comments. If we are talking about Loma Linda, then I have heard the expression that the secret is not trying to master the discipline and presence of mind, but is building community and the activity. But this is nonsense. In other words, we were encouraged to indulge in idleness with so-called friends, instead of having purpose and meaning of life and being aware of reality. In addition, Loma Linda is culturally remote. This allows not to come into contact with the real world, and especially not to see criticism of their hedonistic lifestyle. And if in previous places it is clear that such a lifestyle is forced, then here it is a choice, since people have a lot of money. Some people talk about how wonderful it is not to worry about anything. What you need to eat, what you need to drink, what you need to put on. That is, someone decide this for them, right? What is life and its meaning then? So I don't understand how a lack of stress and a leisurely life can be combined with purpose. Therefore, it is so important to set a goal that is important to you, to choose a worthwhile problem, to analyze what you need and not something imposed by society. Because you will spend all your energy on this goal, and if you don't need it, you have lost your life, and there is no second chance. The next point is involvement in social life. People in the blue zones have communities where they socialize, where they donate money for help. But this was also the case all over the world once upon a time. Moreover, the task of these communities is the transfer of experience, which in our times is avoided as much as possible, so as not to make another person better and not to create a competitor. This function should be performed by a modern state, which collects huge taxes from us. It should provide timely, quality assistance, treat a person as an individual and not as a unit with an assigned taxpayer number, and create conditions, including social ones, for a quality life. But no one cares. It is absolutely true that there is an epidemic of loneliness in America and many countries. Loneliness is growing, isolation is growing, socialization is falling, there are no communication skills. This is being replaced by video games, social networks, TV series and films, again with food and alcohol. Lack of socialization is accompanied by mental disorders, since a person vitally needs communication. And this reduces life expectancy. How to create a community in the modern world, and why is it important? A community is your like-minded people, people united by common interests. Sometimes this is a global goal, but most often it is small local interest groups. I'll share some knowledge with you. Any social group with common interests can solve the problems of a member of its group almost in 100% of cases if there are more than 5 people in it. This is not talked about in the Blue Zone theory. Why? Because they don't know about it. And if they do, it is unprofitable. In the Blue Zone's concept, healthy socialization is presented as a factor that blue mind, as the opportunity for incredible insights. Although these are just beautiful words. In fact, this is a healthy life, quality communication, and like-minded people around, who ideally should be united not only by hobbies, but by common goals, since this is a much stronger and more important association of people. This is presented as something unusual. And this is scary. For example, on Reddit, I read that people are afraid to approach a person to talk about something, to ask for advice. This is scary. Start living your life, instead of wasting money on useless courses and immersion in social networks. One of the factors in Loma Linda is volunteering. Of course, I am for volunteering and good deeds, especially if you understand the consequences, whether it is really help or on the contrary harm, and whether you are investing in good and not in an organization under the guise of good. Volunteering delays age-related changes, since good deeds mean involvement in society. It is help, and this causes the release of certain hormones. People in Loma Linda have the time and opportunity to volunteer on a regular basis. But note that these people have everything they need. They give a lot of money to be looked after, and they play all day long and do good deeds. Why in squads? Because firstly, they do this charity for themselves, not for others. They like to feel like good people and are willing to pretend that they are useful and good without leaving their comfort zone. I'm sure that these people can contribute much more in society and charity, but they do what they are comfortable with, without stress. Many people around the world can do the same, regardless of conditions. And although one of the main points in Loma Linda's secrets of longevity is volunteering, in fact the main point is wealth. Another important point is spirituality in the presence of values. However, here the concepts are also confused. In fact, this is not about religion. We are talking about common values, common goals, and thinking that is aimed at preserving the natural wealth and diversity around us. Religion is business. This is a tool for uniting people, regulating behavior, and creating uniform rules. But it is possible to have and create common values without faith in someone from above. In Okinawa, people thank nature and understand that nature is the reason for human existence on Earth. Among other things, the author said that it doesn't matter what religion you are. What matters is that you are a part of a faith-based community. This is what I'm talking about. But it is not religion. It is a society with shared values. This doesn't require prayer. This doesn't require restrictions from above. This doesn't require imposed rules. Meditation is possible in the form which is convenient for a person. For example, for purity of thoughts, for clarity of mind, being with oneself in silence. And this could be a walk or just relaxing in a chair. Moreover, there are words that the Seventh-day Adventist Church keeps people under program. It reminds to socially connect, it reminds to have a purpose, it reminds to eat healthy food, and so on. That is, on the one hand, by joining this community, people act not independently, not consciously training willpower and discipline, but are under guidance which keeps them together and creates activities for them and prepares food they pay for. On the other hand, it has a great contribution to longevity. However, I would rather invest my money in creating something important, in a purpose that was chosen not by such kind of community, but by me, based on what problems exist around me and in the world. I would prefer to learn to manage what I eat myself. I would prefer to find like-minded people we will come together with, not on the basis of someone else's rules, but on the basis of our common actual values. Among them, there definitely will be goodness and creation. Why not give it to other people to manage? Because this is freedom. Because this is independence. Because we already put a lot of things under the control of other people. And we didn't choose it. And we don't even know about it. This is being in the real world and being able to protect yourself and survive if comfortable conditions disappear. I don't want to bury my head in the sand. However, it is absolutely true that community helps you overcome difficulties and achieve goals. And this works anywhere in the world. And I will tell you for free, without budgets for maintaining communities and making films, that yes, you need friends. You need like-minded people. And not only those people you rest with, but those people you achieve goals with. You work to achieve goals and things that you need. Because creation reflects values and shows your true colors much better than rest. The last point is involvement in family life. I agree with this point. We should change our lifestyle and the world around us so that we have the opportunity to provide our loved ones with comfort and safety, so that we have the opportunity to take care of our loved ones. If modernization affects us in such a way that we don't have a family, is modernization needed in the form it is? Is globalization necessary in this form? Of course, a partner is very important, but a real partner, understanding, caring, and this should be mutual. Family life is a source of strength. It is your personal support. Family is a place where you will receive protection, where you will share stress, and accordingly, together you will get more joy and pleasure from the time spent together. However, I understand that many people spend many years trying to find a like-minded person. Many people put off close relationships for the sake of wealth, career, self-development. And blue zones will not help here. If you put off close relationships for the sake of your goals, then you need to know that no matter how noble and meaningful they are, you will feel the consequences of your loneliness. And finally, let's move on to a general criticism of the blue zone theory. Firstly, this is a non-representative sample. Everyone had different living conditions for hundreds and thousands of years. Everyone has different conditions now. This is a very small number of people in a separate area in closed conditions. There is no comparison here of the hundreds of factors over decades that are present in our life. This is not a controlled experiment with set parameters in different locations around the world with different age groups. In most cases, It is a random combination of factors. For example, walking on changing terrain means a change in blood pressure. Good blood vessels mean the absence of dementia. Living a high life means small risks of developing blood clots, plaques, and so on. Life in remote isolated places means the absence of man-made influence. A large number of sunny days means a high level of vitamin D, the absence of depression, and fresh fruits and vegetables. But we don't know which factors influence which parameters to what extent. We don't know how will the indicators change if we add or remove some factors. In order to present this data as a theory, it is necessary to study statistics and analytics. It is necessary to keep accurate and thorough records without adjusting to the desired results. And traveling and expeditions spending other people's money is not science. It is entertainment for the sake of business. In addition, we don't know for sure whether these people lived permanently in this community or came with age. We don't know the initial influence of external factors. When talking about one of the blue zones, the author said there is no correlation between wealth and health. But Loma Linda contradicts it. And world statistics also show that the longest duration of life is in the richest and the most developed countries. Countries with high life expectancy are developed countries with established policies and lifestyles that influence hundreds of millions of people over decades and have reliable statistics and a wide sample with a low percentage of error. And the top 15 countries with low life expectancy are countries that have experienced numerous wars, have a high rate of incurable diseases, a high level of infant mortality. These are the poorest countries in the world, which have authoritarian regimes, high levels of corruption, a lot of problems with unemployment and literacy of the population in all aspects. The same longevity factors work everywhere. As for Loma Linda, keep in mind that in this same Loma Linda, there are many people who provide conditions for those old people who come here to live. And these people, the service personnel, are also in Loma Linda, in the same premises and territories, but they have a completely different lifestyle, and no one includes them in the longevity sample. Are there any young people at all? Are there those who continue the family line? Or is this just some kind of nursing house? Maybe rich people come here to live out their rich life that was rich before, with quality food, medicine, and a good lifestyle. And one of the main last things is that I want you to understand how the body wears out. Let's imagine that at birth you have a filled vessel. This is your life expectancy. As life progresses, the contents of your vessel decrease, run out. The resources of the vessel are the resources of your body, your internal organs, and so on. The more economically you spend your life, the fewer factors you have that reduce the resource, the longer you will live. You must understand that factors are divided into external and internal. External factors, the environment, greatly influence internal ones, food, drink, society. Many items are a consequence of other factors that we cannot provide. The things I can influence are my lifestyle, and the ones I cannot influence are the features of the place. Blue zones are a geographically determined territory. If you resettle the people living there, then these people will no longer be centenarians, since the factors that influence the appearance of long livers will disappear. Warm climate, clean air, a lot of sun preserve your body and help maintain immunity. Cold winters, short days, lack of vitamin D, seasonal depression reduce your life expectancy, as the body spends resources on maintaining vital functions in difficult conditions. You are sick, you are cold, you have a lack of vitamins, and you feel unwell. Large amounts of fresh, quality fruits and vegetables, clean grains and legumes keep you healthy. You have access to organic food full of vitamins all year round. The lack of fruits and vegetables, a large amount of gluten, sugar, fats wear out your body and put a strain on all organs. And if you have already lived a third of your life in this rhythm, For example, my life is busy and full of stress, and I have already lived a third of my life, although I am not yet 30. If you have already lived a third of your life in this mode, then your body is pretty much worn out. And even if you move to one of the blue zones or to an environment similar to the blue zones while maintaining your current activity, your life expectancy may increase after 10 years, or it may not increase at all. If you change the climate, but you do not change your lifestyle, since you still need to work and achieve your goals, then you have less external stress, but the internal ones remain the same. Therefore, perhaps after 10 years, your life expectancy will increase, but perhaps it will at least not decrease. And if from childhood you initially lived in the conditions of the blue zones with the highest quality lifestyle, of course, your resource from childhood would be spent differently. But we don't have such a sample. There are no experiments. It is impossible to check the quality and duration of your life simultaneously in different conditions. For this, you need two identical people. One you live in the blue zones, the second you live in different conditions. Or even 100 identical versions of you, so that it would be possible to play them in different conditions for several thousand years, and thus deduce the dependence on different factors experimentally. And not just stupidly take several groups of people, look who is centenarian and where he lives, and such the conclusion that if they are long-lived, and if some factors coincide, then we need to do the same, and everything will be great. And one point to think about. These people were born at a time when ecological situation on Earth was much better. And if the blue zones were really effective, then any person who was brought to the zone would immediately live 100 years. And if he didn't smoke and drink alcohol, then 250 years. Therefore, all the switches of lifestyle influence everywhere. And if you do not follow them, then the quality of your life becomes much worse. And life itself is significantly shortened, regardless of where you live. The author says right, avoid bad things, but not for months, but for years, for decades. And this also applies to every person around the world. Each of these places is an excellent opportunity for advertising and earning money. Wealthy people have been paying owners of these places for the past 20 years to be there. They pay for what they themselves can create around them for the same money. Moreover, they can create these conditions not only for themselves and not only for others, but for the world. Because no matter how old you are, no matter what your financial situation is, regardless of the degree of isolation from reality in creating heavenly conditions for yourself, the world is rolling into the abyss. And soon this abyss will reach both these heavenly places and you. And there will no longer be places in the world where you can escape, regardless of money and connections. Perhaps there will no world at all. Therefore, remember that the Blue Zone theory is a far-fetched fairy tale for making money. But if you still find the Blue Zone theory boring and not worthy of attention, then in the next video we will look at the rational problem at hand. Global warming. It was Valeria, the Off-Road Range. I wish you all the best and see you soon.